Hey everyone, we're back in the shop again today. Sorry if we've been jumping around a little bit lately. I know it's we've gone between guns and tail surfaces and other things, but that's just the nature of a big build. That sometimes, you have parts come in and then all of a sudden it distracts you and you head off down a different path. But we're back on the covering today, which is super exciting. So as you can see, we've got the test wing set up down here on the table. I've been sure to give the table a big clean off because you don't want any dust and contamination when you're doing the covering. We've got the Aleen's tacky glue, which has been recommended as a great way to tack down the fabric at the first stage. So let's get into it. So I guess the good thing about doing a little test piece like this is it makes the stakes a lot less high for us to try new things. So I don't think I mentioned, but this fabric is actually from an aircraft manufacturer called Glen Torrance. It's proper fabric. The idea is that we basically tack it down over the frame first, then basically you let it dry. You can give it like a light spray with water in the sun and it will tighten up. But then the way that you basically fuel proof it and get it ready for the final model is you apply dope. So there's all sorts of wisdom around which type of dope. I think nitrate dope's one and butyrate dope is the other. I've actually got no idea what this one is. It's actually just one that I bought from a supplier here in Australia. But that's the thing, we're just running a test. Who knows? We'll probably make mistakes, it'll probably be a total mess. But I've never done this before, so it's an opportunity to do it first time. I haven't been able to find any YouTube films where people are trying to use this fabric to cover a wing, so we're kind of pioneers in that sense, I guess. So listen, I hope you learn some things while we learn some things, and maybe it helps influence your build at some point in the future. This morning I left it to dry overnight with the tacky glue and it's dried really nicely. It's not, obviously we haven't timed it yet, but to start with something I think like that is a nice start, because obviously we're going to be doing shrinking later on. I thought I'd just take the opportunity just to explain how this kind of system works. So first and foremost, as you can see, it's really like a printed fabric, which is pretty cool. It's almost like a sort of thin linen, and the process is you start by just simply tacking down the edges. So imagine you've got the square here. What you want to do is to just get all of the edges, and we use this tacky glue. So this is like the sort of glue that dressmakers use, and some of the guys online that have used this system before mentioned that this stuff is great. So I've never used it before. I don't know how long it takes to dry, etc., etc. So what I've found so far is you basically cover the edge, for example, with the tacky glue. I actually leave it, so I rub it in with my finger so it's nice and smooth. I then leave it, I don't put the fabric on yet. You leave it for about 5 to 10 minutes, and then obviously, as the name says, it goes really sticky. And then when you actually wrap the fabric around it, it actually just holds it down. I've actually only stuck this about 5 minutes ago, and as you can see, I'm not even using pins to secure it, so it's really holding it down beautifully. So it's obviously a bit of trial and error. I just sort of was on a bit of a roll with this edge, so I thought, oh, maybe I'll try and do this edge here, and as you can see, that's got quite a nice edge on it. All I've done is fold it over, made a couple of kind of joints on the end here, folded it underneath, and then put the main bit over the top. But even when I trim that out, that looks really, really nice. If the final plane ends up looking like that, I'd be pretty happy. So what happens next in this process, and this is the bit I'm kind of more worried about, is we use dope. So any old-time builders, or maybe you've seen your grandfather building, tissue paper and dope was the way that everyone used to do model aeroplanes back many years ago. Some people still do that, and it works well for them. So what we do is, once we've tacked all this down, as you can see, all 4 corners tacked down. I think that's like a nice tension, as I mentioned. I'm actually going to take it upstairs in the sun, and I'm going to give it a light spray with water when it dries out, it actually tightens the fabric a little bit more. And then once that dries out and we're ready to go, we're actually going to get this dope. And I've actually seen online some people recommend painting it on, other people recommend using a foam roller, so I might try a couple of different ways and see what works for us. But the thing about this stuff is it absolutely stinks. I mean, I took the lid off before and my son and I had a quick smell, and I swear we felt instantly high afterwards. I mean, it has a really full-on smell. And the recommendation with this fabric is to do kind of 6 to 8 coats of that particular dope. So that worries me a little bit. But anyway, the great thing about building a little test frame like this is I don't feel any pressure whatsoever just to try things, because at the end of the day, this isn't the main plane. If we were trying it on the wing, I'd be really worried about it, because I don't want to ruin, you know, what's been two years of building effort to this point. So I would really recommend, if you're trying a new covering system, build a frame. It doesn't have to be as elaborate as this. It might actually just be like a little square thing. But and then just start doing tests. So that's kind of where we're at. All right, you can see here that I've just smeared a whole bunch of glue on there with the old finger tool. And so just to show you sort of how well it holds the fabric down, all I'm literally doing is just folding it over and just trying to smooth out any kind of bumps. This front edge is a bit of a mess. I haven't done that very well. I think I'll probably just glue that and then fold that around, something like that. I did the one on the other end a little bit better, but doesn't matter. This is a test thing. It's not the final show plane. But look at that. Just by pushing the glue into the fabric, it really holds it really nicely. So I love this stuff. I mean, it's working nicely so far. Hope I don't regret that in a few videos time when we start doping, but it's been fun to work with so far. So look at that. That's pretty good. It's not bad for a edge. You can see a little bit of the glue just bleeding through here, but what I do is when it dries off, I just scratch it off with my fingers and it seems to come off pretty well. But I mean, look at that. I mean, look at that end in particular. I did that end much better. It's looking really, really nice. And the reason why it's short here is because you do the underside first, and then when you do the top, you have it go all the way over and it overlaps on the front edge. And it'll overlap on this one and probably go all the way down to the bottom, so it just looks like a really beautiful thing. So there you go. Everything's looking pretty neat now. I'm just sort of I've cut it, this edge here. This end looks okay. I think that one looks better. That was actually ironically the first one that I did, but this stuff's quite forgiving. You can kind of push it down with your fingers and it looks quite neat. So once we dope all that, I guess that'll all fill in. And so what I'm going to do now is I couldn't figure out what to do with I think I might just see how I've cut little slots for the ribs, and I'm just going to wrap this around here just so it's a really nice, lot of contact around the edge here, and so that when we start shrinking it, it's got nice grip. And then when we lay the other part of the fabric over the top, obviously it'll go over the top like that, and it'll kind of stop just underneath like that, so it should grab really nicely. So yeah, happy with how it's coming along. Okay, that's it. God, this whole thing probably took 15 minutes. So you can see here I've just wrapped around the front edge. I'm loving this glue. It's amazing. I mean, I haven't put any pins or anything on the stuff I did last night. You saw that I put pins on because I was worried about it moving. But this morning, all of this stuff is just letting the tackiness of the glue hold the fabric in place. So, yeah, I mean, super happy with that. I mean, that's fantastic, you know, for a first try. But let's not get overconfident. So the next stage is to take it upstairs and wet it down with water. I did want to just mention one thing. So I said that there aren't, well, not that I've been able to find any YouTube films of guys covering with this type of lozenge fabric. There was a resource that I found. I think it's called Flightline Graphics. He's a guy who built English guy who built a Glen Torrance Fokker D.VII, and he had quite a good little couple of pages of text and photos about his experience with covering with this stuff. One of the mistakes he made early on is people often say you should wash it first. You should actually put it in the washing machine. So he did that, and he said it basically ruined the fabric. So I decided not to do that. I took the fabric straight out of the bag, and then I've started playing around with it as you've seen on the video. So we haven't washed it. The first time water's going to hit it is in a moment when I take it upstairs, and we'll probably let it dry first. Sorry, let all the glue dry first. Then we'll take it upstairs and we'll give it an initial spray with some water and let it dry in the sun. So the other tip that he had, so he said don't wash it because it ruined it for him. The second tip that he had, and this was the biggest tip, was the importance of the temperature of the air when you're using the dope. So as you can see from me wearing a hoodie, we're coming into winter here in Australia. So down in the shop here, it's probably a bit cool. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to take it up, and when I spray it, initially I'm actually going to do it in the sun. So the sun here is obviously quite warm. So hopefully it gets it to, keeps the heat in it. It'll make it go tighter. And then also when we start applying the dope, I'm also going to make sure I do it in the sun. And I've seen other people online who seem to be doing all their doping outside on what seems to be a warm summer's day, get really good results. So heat, I think, is going to be really important. Hey everyone, this is a bit of an unusual little straight to camera because we're actually out of the garage for a change. But have a look at this. So basically we let the fabric dry. Then what I did is I actually sprayed it with a bit of water. We just left it for 5 minutes, and have a look at how much it's tightened it up. I mean, that is actually really, really good. It's got quite a bit of tension to it. I think that, listen, if at the end of the day, if we end up having it look as neat as this with those edges like that, and it's that tight after we do the dope, I'll be absolutely delighted. So I guess only one thing left to do now. Let's do a coating of dope and see how it turns out. All right, here we go. Like we showed, it got really nice and tight when we sprayed the water, which is fantastic. So now it's time to try the dope. I tell you what, you're lucky that there's no smell-o-vision, because even though we're sitting outside in the sun, this stuff absolutely reeks. So I can't think of the last time I used dope. Maybe it was 30 years ago, maybe making one of my first planes with tissue paper. So let's see how this works. After the first coat, I literally only just put it on a couple of minutes ago. So what have we noticed? Firstly, the actual surface, it's actually gone tighter. It's like a drum now. I was expecting it to really loosen up with the first coat, and apparently it's meant to tighten up with future coats. You can obviously see the spars here, which isn't ideal, but I didn't build this wing properly. It's the fabric's contacting those spars because I didn't put the cap strips on. So on the, when we eventually do it, you'll probably see a bit of a darker line across the ribs, which isn't such an issue because we're then going to put the rib tape over the top. But listen, it's an experiment. Honestly, I don't even know whether this is actually the right type of dope. This is just something that I was able to buy here in Australia from a local retailer. It says that it's fast drying tightening dope for use on tissue or silk. So I don't know, this is fabric, so hopefully that counts as well. So anyway, let's I guess one of the concerns at the moment is it's gone very pale. So I guess we'll just have to see how it dries, and then after that, what happens when we put on more coats. Alright, here we go. I came down a few minutes ago and decided to give the little test wing a second coat of dope. I was actually really, I wasn't really worried. I was really happy with the way the tension is. Can you hear that? It literally is as tight as a drum. My only small concern, and it was only after the first coat, was it had a real like milkiness to it after the one coat, but as you can see here, there's still a little milky patch down here, which is I think where I didn't put enough on in the first coat, but I've put it on pretty thick in the second coat, and it's really gone back to the original colour of the fabric, as you can see here. So it's sort of gone back to that colour, which is really great. That's what I really wanted. I didn't want to lose this colour. In fact, if anything, when you dope it, it goes a little bit darker, and again, that's something that I'm really happy with. So listen, in terms of what it looks like, I mean, have a look at the edge, the wingtip here. It looks amazing. The way it's wrapped around here. I mean, it was really, really easy using the Aleen's glue, because of the sticky glue. I found out after reading the instructions on the Aleen's glue online that it dries sort of 40 minutes to an hour, which is great. So you can do it relatively quickly. But I think where that's at, that's 2 coats of the dope. As I say, super tight, so no worries about it being a big sort of wrinkly mess. I think probably 1 or 2 more coats, and that may be it. I think the only thing I'd probably change next time with the next piece of fabric is I might thin the dope out a bit. It's quite thick in here at the moment, so I might just thin it out a bit and maybe give some thinner coats rather than at the moment they're quite thick coats. But anyway, all in all, never done this before. That's one day's work, so I'm really, really happy, and it's giving me the confidence to be able to potentially use this on the rest of the plane. I do.